I always thought that when my dad said the words, "I have a surprise for you," it would mean something joyful. Maybe a long-lost memory, a small gift, or at least some words of kindness. But instead, his surprise came inside a thin white envelope that nearly shattered my life. It wasn't money, it wasn't a gift. It was a $900,000 debt he had signed in my name. And in that moment, the ground beneath me cracked open. The perfect father illusion. Growing up, I used to defend my dad in front of everyone. My friends would complain about their strict fathers, the ones who checked homework or enforced curfews, while mine always seemed carefree. Too carefree. He wasn't the kind of dad who asked if I ate, or if my grades were good. Instead, he was the fun parent, always telling stories, laughing loudly, promising bigger things. People said I was lucky, but inside our house, I learned early that his promises were like smoke, beautiful when floating, gone when you tried to hold them. Still, as a child, I clung to the idea of him being special. Every small act of attention felt like gold. Maybe that's why, even when I grew older and noticed cracks in his character, missed bills, shady business deals, sudden disappearances, I still wanted to believe. I didn't know that belief would nearly cost me everything. The envelope. It was a Tuesday evening when he called me over. His voice had that upbeat tone he used whenever he was about to tell a big story. "Sit down," he said, smiling like a magician ready to pull a rabbit out of a hat. He reached into the drawer, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to me. Inside, it wasn't a letter or photos. It was a legal contract. The words leapt out like poison. Loan agreement. $900,000. Guarantor, my full name. My hand shook as I read. "Dad, what is this?" "That," he said, leaning back with a grin, "is your future. An investment. A surprise. I secured a loan under your name for a business deal. You'll thank me later when it pays off." I thought he was joking, but his eyes, glinting with that strange mix of charm and desperation, told me otherwise. The trap. I said no. Of course I said no. My voice cracked, but I was firm. "Dad, this isn't a gift. This is a nightmare. I didn't sign this. How did you even?" His smile vanished. In an instant, the warmth in the room turned to ice. He slammed his fist on the table. "After everything I've done for you, you can't even do this one thing? You're ungrateful. Do you think I raised you for nothing?" Raised me? I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. He hadn't raised me. My mom, my part-time jobs, my own resilience had raised me. He had floated in and out, dropping broken promises like breadcrumbs. But still, he had used my name, my identity. Somewhere, somehow, he had found a way to make it legal enough to bind me. The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I couldn't breathe. The guilt weapon. For the next hour, he launched every weapon he knew would hurt me. Guilt, you're my child. Family helps family. If you can't do this for me, what kind of daughter are you? Shame. Everyone else's kids are supporting their parents. You let me drown. Fear. If you walk away, we'll all go down. Debt collectors, lawyers, you'll regret it. Every word felt like a chain tightening around me. But in that storm of manipulation, a small voice inside me whispered, "This isn't love. This is control." Cracks in the story. I started asking questions he couldn't easily dodge. What's the business? Where's the plan? Who else is involved? At first, he brushed it off with vague answers. Investors, partners, it's all set. But the more I pressed, the more cracks showed. The business wasn't real. It was just another one of his schemes, a gamble on a fantasy that had already failed. And I realized this wasn't about me helping him. This was about him using me as his escape route. The turning point. I stood up, shaking. "I'm not signing this. I won't ruin my life because you can't control yours." His face twisted with rage. For the first time, I saw not just a careless man, but a desperate one. His eyes narrowed. "If you walk out that door, don't you dare call yourself my child again." Something inside me broke then, but not the way he wanted. For years, I had been chained by the hope of his approval, by the idea that maybe one day he'd be the father I needed. But in that moment, I realized the truth. He wasn't losing me. He had lost me long ago. I picked up the envelope, tore it into pieces, and let the papers fall like ashes onto the floor. Without another word, I walked away. Silence that wasn't silent. For days after I walked out, the silence felt deafening. But silence with my dad was never really silence. It was always the calm before another storm. I ignored his calls. I ignored the string of texts that ranged from pathetic begging to volcanic anger. You'll regret this. Blood is thicker than water. I gave you life, and you can't give me loyalty. I wanted to believe that if I stayed quiet, he'd move on. But deep down, I knew him better than that. My father was the kind of man who didn't let go. He didn't accept no, not from creditors, not from partners, and especially not from me. And I was right, because the next knock on my door wasn't his. It was a man in a dark suit with a briefcase. The debt collectors. "Are you my name?" the man asked, his tone flat but loaded. "Yes," I whispered, even though my instinct screamed to slam the door. He handed me a paper, a notice. My stomach dropped. My father hadn't just forged my name. He had already submitted it. He had already tied me into his drowning game. The numbers stared at me like chains. $900,000 plus interest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Betrayal on paper. That night, I sat on the floor with the notice spread out in front of me. I read the lines again and again, hoping I had misunderstood. But there it was, my name, my signature, except it wasn't mine. I called him, shaking with rage. "How could you do this to me?" He didn't even flinch. His voice over the phone was steady, almost smug. "You'll thank me one day. You think I raised a coward? You're strong enough to handle it. And when the business pays off, you'll be rich. Stop whining." I wanted to scream, to shatter the phone against the wall. But instead, I whispered, "You didn't raise me. You used me." And I hung up. Cracks in my world. For weeks, I lived like a fugitive in my own life. Every ring of the phone made me jump. Every knock on the door made my heart race. Friends noticed I was quieter. My boss asked if I was okay when I zoned out at work. But how could I explain? How do you tell people your own father sold your future for his gamble? Sleep became a stranger. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the number, $900,000. It wasn't just debt. It was a prison sentence, one I hadn't even signed up for. A glimmer of strength. But here's the thing. Despair has a strange way of planting seeds. One night, after crying until my chest ached, I looked in the mirror and saw myself, not as his daughter, not as his scapegoat, but as a person who deserved freedom. And in that moment, something shifted. I decided that if my father wanted me to drown, I would learn to swim harder than I ever had. Seeking help. The next morning, I gathered every document, every piece of paper, every text message he had sent me. I walked into a lawyer's office with trembling hands. The lawyer scanned the documents, frowning. "This is serious, but if that signature isn't yours, and if we can prove fraud, you may have a chance." It wasn't a guarantee, but it was hope. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't entirely powerless. My father's fury. When he found out I had gone to a lawyer, his mask cracked. He stormed into my apartment, pounding on the door until my neighbors peeked out. "You think you can betray me like this?" he shouted. His eyes blazed with a mixture of fear and fury. "You're my blood. You think strangers will protect you? You're nothing without me." But his words didn't sting the way they used to. I looked him in the eye, steady this time, and said, "No, Dad. I'm nothing because of you. I'm something in spite of you." He froze for a second as if he didn't recognize me. Then he left, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. Isolation. The following weeks were a blur of court notices, legal filings, and sleepless nights. Every time I thought I was gaining ground, another obstacle appeared. His lawyers, his threats, the way he twisted the story to make me look like the ungrateful child. Some relatives even called me, parroting his words, "He's your father." Family sacrifices. Why are you airing dirty laundry? But I had made my choice. For once in my life, I chose me, even if it meant standing alone. Small victories. The case dragged on, but small victories began to pile up. A handwriting expert confirmed the signature wasn't mine. The bank admitted there were irregularities in the documents. Piece by piece, his fortress of lies began to crumble. He tried to corner me emotionally again, calling late at night with pitiful sobs. I'll lose everything. Don't do this to me. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered he hadn't felt sorry for me when he handed me that envelope. A different kind of strength. Through it all, something unexpected happened. I began to grow. For the first time, I learned to set boundaries. I learned that love without respect isn't love at all. I learned that family can be a bond, but it can also be a weapon. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is drop the sword. And as my father grew more desperate, I grew calmer. Because I knew that no matter how loud his storms got, I had already weathered the worst one, believing his love was real. But the battle wasn't over. The final confrontation was still ahead, and it would change everything, forever. The courtroom showdown. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm I couldn't outrun. My palms were sweating, my chest heavy, but my steps were firm. I wasn't just walking into a courtroom. I was walking into the battlefield of my childhood, facing the man who had twisted the word father into a weapon. He was already there, sitting in his crisp suit, acting calm, as though this was nothing more than a misunderstanding. When our eyes met, his smile spread, mocking, confident, certain he could charm his way out as he always had. But this time, I wasn't the child begging for scraps of love. I was the adult fighting for my freedom. The lawyers spoke, the documents were reviewed, and for the first time, the lies had nowhere to hide. The judge leaned forward. Based on the evidence, it is clear that the loan agreement was signed under fraudulent circumstances. The guarantor, my name, bears no legal responsibility for this debt. The gavel struck. My father's empire of manipulation collapsed in a single sound. His collapse. As the courtroom emptied, he rushed toward me. Gone was the confident grin. His face was pale, his eyes frantic. "You don't understand what you've done," he hissed. "They'll come after me. I'll lose everything. And it'll be on your conscience." I looked at him, the man I had once wanted to love, and saw him clearly, small, desperate, broken not because of me, but because of his own choices. "No, Dad," I said quietly. "It's finally on yours." And for the first time, I walked past him without looking back, picking up the pieces. Freedom didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived slowly, like sunlight creeping through blinds after a long night. The debt was gone, but the scars remained, the endless anxiety, the memories of his shouting, the heaviness of betrayal. Yet, every day, I stitched myself back together. I started therapy, where I finally spoke the words I had buried for years. He used me. He never protected me. And I don't owe him my life. It was messy. It was painful. But it was real. A new definition of family. One evening, months later, I was sitting with friends who had become my true family. The people who celebrated my wins and held me during losses. We were laughing over cheap takeout, and suddenly it hit me. Family isn't blood. Family is who shows up when the world collapses. Family is who lifts you when you can't stand. And in that simple, ordinary moment, surrounded by love that wasn't conditional, I felt lighter than I ever had before. His last attempt. It wasn't the end of him, though. People like my father rarely fade quietly. One afternoon, I got a letter. His handwriting. My heart skipped before I even opened it. Inside, the words were the same old script, apologies laced with blame, sorrow tied with manipulation. "I'm still your father. You can't erase me. One day, you'll realize you need me." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and left it there. Because I had already realized the truth. I didn't need him. I never had. The turning point in me. As time passed, I began building the life I had almost lost. Career opportunities opened. I saved money without the weight of his schemes dragging me down. I traveled, wrote, created, lived. And in quiet moments, I reflected on the girl I used to be, the one who clung to his approval like it was oxygen. I wished I could hold her hand and whisper, "You are enough. You always were." His failure doesn't define you. Lessons etched in fire. If there's one thing this experience carved into me, it's this. Family is not entitlement. Just because someone is related to you doesn't mean they own your life. Love without respect is control. If love comes with conditions, with chains, with guilt, it isn't love. Saying no is not betrayal. Sometimes no is the most powerful form of self-love. I had spent years trying to earn his approval, only to realize the approval I truly needed was my own. Freedom. Now, whenever I see an envelope in the mail, my heart doesn't race anymore. I open it calmly, knowing it won't contain shackles. And every time someone says, I have a surprise for you, I smile, not with dread, but with the quiet strength of someone who has survived the worst surprises and come out stronger. My father once handed me a $900,000 debt and called it love. But what he really gave me was something far greater. The chance to break free, to build my own life, and to learn that sometimes the greatest gift a parent can give is teaching you how to let them go.